The fluorescent lights hummed overhead like a distant swarm of insects, casting a sterile glow over the aisles of the small-town supermarket. It was late afternoon, the kind where the sun slanted through the grimy windows, turning the linoleum floor into a patchwork of shadows. Miles St. Kincaid pushed his cart slowly, the wheels squeaking faintly against the worn tiles. At 42, he was a man built from the road, broad shoulders under a faded leather vest patched with the emblem of the Iron Promise MC, scars hidden beneath calloused hands that had gripped handlebars through too many storms. His grey eyes, sharp as flint, scanned the shelves out of habit, always watching for threats that lingered just beyond the mundane. He'd come here for basics: coffee, motor oil, a six-pack to chase away the ghosts that rode shotgun on his Harley. The club was his anchor now, a brotherhood forged in the fires of old wars and broken oaths. But today, the weight of a forgotten promise pressed heavier than usual, a vow made to a dying comrade under a desert sky to protect what family remained. Miles shook it off, reaching for a can of beans, when a small hand tugged at his jeans. He froze. Looking down, he saw her, a girl no older than 8, with tangled brown hair and wide, frightened eyes the color of storm clouds. Her face was smudged with dirt, her pink dress rumpled and too big for her frame, as if it had been borrowed from a forgotten laundry basket. She clutched a crumpled candy wrapper like a lifeline, her tiny body trembling. Around them, the store buzzed with oblivious shoppers, mothers pushing carts, an old man flipping through tabloids. But in that instant, the world narrowed to just the two of them. "Please," she whispered, her voice barely cutting through the murmur of the air conditioning. "Act like you're my dad." Her grip tightened, nails digging into the denim, and Miles caught the desperation in her plea. No child said that lightly. His instincts, honed from years of riding with wolves, flared. He glanced around subtly. A man in a hooded jacket lingered at the end of the aisle, pretending to read a cereal box, his eyes flicking toward them too often. Another figure, broader and unkempt, hovered near the checkout, phone in hand, like he was waiting for a signal. Without a word, Miles knelt to her level, his voice dropping to a gravelly rumble that carried the calm of open highways. "Hey, kiddo," he said, loud enough for nearby ears. "You wander off again? Let's get what we need and head home." He placed a protective hand on her shoulder, feeling the rapid flutter of her heartbeat through the thin fabric. She nodded vigorously, leaning into him as if he'd always been there, her small frame molding against his side like a shield had finally arrived. The store's PA system crackled with a mundane announcement about closing time, but Miles's mind raced. Who was she running from? The men watching? Were they family or something darker? He guided her toward the produce section, keeping his body between her and the hooded figure, his cart now a barrier. The air smelled of overripe fruit and cleaning solution, mingling with the faint leather scent of his vest. "What's your name, sweetheart?" he murmured, eyes never leaving the mirrors at the end of the aisles. "Sophie," she breathed, glancing up with a mix of fear and fragile trust. "Sophie Reed. They're not supposed to find me." Her words hung like smoke, hinting at shadows Miles knew too well. Lost kids, broken homes, the kind of trouble that seeped into small towns like oil from a busted engine. He nodded, committing her name to memory, the promise already forming in his chest like an old engine roaring to life. "Well, Sophie, your dad's got you now. No one's touching that." It was a role he'd never asked for, but honor didn't wait for invitations. Miles had lost his own daughter years ago to a senseless accident on rain-slicked roads, a hole that no mileage could fill. This girl, with her pleading eyes, stirred that buried ache, turning it into resolve. He wouldn't let her slip away. As they moved toward the dairy case, the hooded man shifted, closing the distance. Miles felt the prickle at the back of his neck, the same warning that had saved him in sand-swept ambushes overseas. He pulled out his phone casually, thumbing a quick text to Jax, his road captain. Supermarket on Elm. Kid in trouble. Need eyes. The Iron Promise wasn't just a club. It was a vow, a family chosen in the crucible of loyalty. If this was the call, he'd answer and bring the thunder with him. Sophie clung closer, her whispers painting a fragmented picture, a mother gone too soon, an uncle with a temper like lightning, nights hiding under beds from shouts that shook the walls. Miles listened, his face a mask of paternal concern for the onlookers, but inside, fury simmered. This wasn't just a lost child, it was a spark against the dark. A test of the oaths he'd sworn to uphold justice, where badges turned blind. By the time they reached the checkout, the store had thickened with evening shoppers, the beep of scanners a rhythmic pulse. The broader man approached from the side, his voice oily as he called out, "Hey, Missy, there you are, come on back." Sophie's body went rigid against Miles, her hand squeezing his like a vice. Miles turned slowly, his stance widening, the biker in him uncoiling like a chain. "She's with me," he said, voice steady as granite, eyes locking onto the strangers with a warning that needed no words. The room seemed to hold its breath, the cashier pausing mid-scan, a woman nearby clutching her purse tighter. In that charged silence, Miles felt the weight of what was coming. Not just protection for this girl, but a reckoning for whatever had driven her to him. The man hesitated, glancing at his partner who now hovered uncertainly. "You her father?" He sneered, but there was a crack in his bravado, a flicker of doubt. Miles smiled faintly, the kind that hid steel. "Damn right I am, and we're done here." He paid for the cart, extra snacks for Sophie, chocolate bars to ease her fears, and guided her out into the fading light, the supermarket doors whooshing shut behind them like a curtain falling on Act 1. Outside, the parking lot stretched under sodium lamps, just flickering on, the air cooling with the promise of night. Miles's Harley waited, a black beast gleaming under the dusk. He knelt again, eye level with Sophie. "You safe with me, kid? I make promises I keep." She nodded, tears streaking her cheeks, and in that moment Miles knew this wasn't chance. It was the road calling him back to purpose, to honor the ghosts and build something real from the ruins. As he lifted her onto the bike's passenger seat, wrapping her in his spare jacket, his phone buzzed. Jax's reply, "Crew's mobilizing. Ride safe, Saint." The engine growled to life, a deep thunder that echoed his resolve, carrying them into the unknown where loyalty would be tested and redemption forged in the fire of unspoken vows. The engine's roar faded into the twilight hum of the small town as Miles guided the Harley down Elm Street, Sophie's small arms wrapped tightly around his waist. The wind whipped at them, carrying the scent of cooling asphalt and distant rain. Her cheek pressed against the leather of his vest like an anchor in a storm. Streetlights blinked on one by one, casting long shadows that danced across cracked sidewalks and faded storefronts. Miles kept his speed steady, eyes flicking to the rearview mirror every few seconds, watching for tails in the sparse evening traffic, a pickup truck lingering too long at the light, headlights that seemed to follow the curve of the road a beat too late. Sophie's breath came in shallow bursts against his back, her voice muffled but urgent. "They'll come looking, Uncle Ray. He always does." The words sliced through the rush of air, painting fragments of a life Miles could piece together from the edges. A home that echoed with raised voices, doors slammed in the dead of night, a mother's absence leaving cracks too wide for a child to bridge alone. He didn't press for more, not yet. Instead, he reached back with one gloved hand, giving her knee a reassuring squeeze. "Not tonight, Sophie. We've got Miles between us now." The town gave way to open road, the supermarket shrinking in the distance like a bad memory dissolving in the rear view. Miles's mind raced ahead, mapping the route to the Iron Promise clubhouse on the outskirts. A weathered barn converted into a sanctuary of chrome and camaraderie, hidden behind acres of scrubland and rusted fences. It was there, among the brothers who'd shared foxholes and flat tires, that he'd find the backup he needed. Jax's text burned in his pocket like a lit fuse. The crew would be rolling out soon, engines sinking like heartbeats in the dark. As they crested a low hill, the landscape opened to fields dotted with silos silhouetted against the bruised sky. The Harley thrummed beneath them, a steady pulse that Miles felt in his bones, reminding him of rides through foreign dunes where promises were sealed in blood and silence. He'd lost too much back then, his squad scattered like dust, a best friend gasping out a final oath under a merciless sun. "Watch over mine if I can't, Saint." Miles had carried that weight like an extra saddlebag, burying it under club runs and solitary highways. But Sophie, with her whispered plea, had cracked it open, stirring the ghosts he'd tried to outrun. A sudden glint in the mirror snapped him alert, a set of headlights closing fast, too purposeful for a casual commuter. Miles eased off the throttle, letting the bike coast into a gentle curve, his free hand drifting toward the handlebar pouch where he kept a flare gun for emergencies. Not for harm, but for light in the shadows. "Hold on tight, kiddo," he murmured over the wind. Sophie nodded against him, her grip ironclad, as if she'd been riding shotgun her whole life. The pursuing vehicle, a nondescript sedan, its paint chipped like old regrets, pulled alongside for a heartbeat. The driver's face obscured by the dash glow. Then it surged ahead, cutting them off at the next intersection with a screech of tires that echoed like a challenge. Miles braked hard, the Harley fishtailing on loose gravel, dust billowing in swirling clouds that stung his eyes. The sedan skidded to a stop across the road, blocking their path, its engine idling with a low growl. Two doors swung open. The hooded man from the store emerged from the driver's side, his posture tense, while the broader figure lumbered out shotgun, a flashlight beam slicing through the dusk like a blade. "Get off the bike, old man!" the hooded one barked, voice laced with false authority, the beam swinging toward Sophie. She buried her face deeper into Miles's side, a soft whimper escaping. The air thickened with tension, the scent of hot rubber mingling with the earthy tang of the fields. Miles killed the engine, the sudden silence amplifying every rustle, the crickets starting their chorus, the distant hum of an approaching storm. He dismounted slowly, positioning himself between Sophie and the men, his frame a wall of quiet resolve. "She's not going anywhere with you," he said, tone even, like gravel under tires. No bluster, just the unyielding truth of a man who'd stared down worse than this. The broader one stepped forward, his shadow stretching long, but Miles caught the hesitation in his eyes, a flicker of doubt, perhaps sensing the biker wasn't alone in this. "You don't know who you're messing with," the hooded man snarled, pulling out a phone, thumb hovering as if dialing for reinforcements. "That girl's family business. Hand her over or we'll make this official." Official? The word hung like a threat wrapped in legality, hinting at papers forged in back rooms, authorities turned a blind eye by favors or fear. Miles had seen it before, systems that protected the wrong side, leaving the vulnerable to the wolves. Sophie's hand tugged at his vest from behind. "Please, don't let them take me back." Her voice, small but fierce, ignited something deep in Miles, a spark that fanned the embers of his old vow. He glanced back, meeting her eyes, and in that shared look, a silent pact formed. He'd be the shield she'd never had. Before the men could close in, a low rumble built on the horizon, like thunder rolling in from the plains. Headlights pierced the gloom, a convoy of Harleys cresting the hill, engines harmonizing in a symphony of loyalty. Jax led the pack, his silhouette unmistakable, flanked by a dozen brothers from the Iron Promise, vests gleaming under the emerging moon. They fanned out, not aggressive, but present, A wall of chrome and conviction that made the pursuers falter. The hooded man cursed under his breath, backing toward the sedan. "This ain't over." They piled in, tires spinning gravel as they peeled away, taillights fading into the night like retreating shadows. Jax pulled up beside Miles, killing his engine with a nod. "Heard you needed a ride along, Saint. What's the play?" Miles lifted Sophie down gently, her feet touching the ground, but staying close. "Safe house first, then we dig into who these shadows are." The crew encircled them, a protective ring under the star-pricked sky, the air alive with the promise of answers and the bond that no road could break. As they mounted up again, engines reigniting in unison, Miles felt the weight shift, not heavier, but shared. This girl, this moment, was rewriting his path, turning solitary miles into a journey of reclaimed honor. The convoy rolled forward, dust trailing like a banner, toward the clubhouse where truths would unravel and loyalties forge anew. The clubhouse loomed like a sentinel in the moonlit scrubland, its corrugated metal walls etched with the patina of countless storms. The iron promise emblem, a coiled serpent around a broken chain, fading into the night. Floodlights buzzed faintly, casting pools of amber over the gravel lot where a dozen Harleys stood in silent vigil, their chrome accents glinting like watchful eyes. Miles eased the bike to a stop at the edge of the circle, the engine's final rumble dying into the whisper of wind through dry grass. Sophie slid off behind him, her small hand still clasped in his, as if letting go might unravel the fragile safety they'd claimed. The air carried the sharp tang of pine resin mixed with engine oil, a scent that grounded Miles like an old friend's handshake. Jax dismounted first, his boots crunching on the stones as he approached, the crew fanning out behind him in a loose semicircle. At 38, Jax was all lean muscle and quiet intensity, his face marked by a jagged scar from a bar fight that had tested the club's bonds years back. "Brought company, Saint?" he said, his voice low, eyes flicking to Sophie with a gentleness that belied his road-hardened edges. No judgment, just the unspoken code. You protect what's yours, no questions asked at the gate. Miles nodded, guiding Sophie forward. "This is Sophie. She's riding with us till the dust settles." The girl looked up at the gathering of bikers, tattooed arms, weathered vests, faces shadowed by helmets tucked under elbows, and shrank a fraction closer to Miles. But there was curiosity in her eyes too, a spark amid the fear, like a flame testing the wind. The brothers exchanged glances, the kind that spoke volumes without words. They'd all carried ghosts of their own, promises etched into skin and soul from battles won and lost. Inside, the clubhouse unfolded like a hidden world, exposed beams overhead, strung with bare bulbs that swayed gently, casting flickering shadows across scarred wooden tables laden with half-empty bottles and ashtrays. The air was thick with the aroma of stale coffee and cigar smoke, undercut by the faint metallic bite of gun oil from the wall racks. A massive stone fireplace dominated one wall, its embers glowing low, a remnant of the night's earlier gathering. Miles led Sophie to a worn leather couch near the back, where she perched on the edge, knees drawn up, watching as the crew settled in around a central table scarred from too many late-night councils. "Tell us what you saw," Miles said to Sophie, kneeling to her level again, his voice a steady anchor. The room quieted, the brothers leaning in, not crowding but present, their loyalty a tangible force. Sophie hesitated, her fingers twisting the hem of his jacket still draped over her shoulders. Then the words spilled out, halting at first, like rain starting on parched earth, nights locked in a room while shouts echoed from downstairs, her mother's weary eyes promising escape that never came, Uncle Ray's grip too tight on her arm during rare outings, whispers of family matters that hid sharper truths. "He said she'd left us, but I heard the fight." And then she was gone, Her voice cracked on the last word, the weight of absence hanging heavy. Jax's jaw tightened, his fist clenching around a beer bottle. Sounds like more than family squabbles. We got ears in town, social services tangled up in favors, badges looking the other way. He glanced at Miles, the shared history flashing between them. A deployment where they'd buried a brother under foreign stars, vowing to guard what was left behind. This felt like that vow echoing back, a call to arms wrapped in a child's plea. Miles rose, pacing the creaky floorboards, the boards groaning under his weight like old bones protesting the cold. Ray's no uncle worth the name. Those shadows in the store and on the road. They're his muscle, bought cheap. He pulled out his phone, the screen's glow illuminating his face in stark lines. A quick search through club contacts yielded fragments, a vague report of a woman vanishing from a trailer park months back, whispers of debts unpaid and tempers unchecked. No names, no proof, just the kind of smoke that hinted at fire. We need more than hunches. Tomorrow we ride to the edges, talk to who won't talk to cops. The crew murmured agreement, voices overlapping in a low tide of resolve. Lena, the club's unofficial medic, a nurse with ink-black hair and a past as scarred as any veteran's, approached Sophie with a mug of hot cocoa, steam curling like a protective veil. Here, sweetie, let's get you cleaned up. Sophie accepted it with a tentative smile, the warmth seeping into her hands, easing the chill that went deeper than the night air. Lena shot Miles a knowing look. She'd patched him up after his daughter's accident, held the silence when words failed. This was their way, mending what the world broke, one quiet act at a time. As the hour deepened, the clubhouse pulsed with subdued energy. Maps unrolled on the table, routes sketched in pencil, plans forming like storm clouds gathering strength. Miles sat beside Sophie, her head nodding against his arm as exhaustion claimed her. He watched her sleep, the rise and fall of her chest a rhythm that steadied his own racing thoughts. The promise he'd made in the supermarket had roots now, digging into soil he'd thought barren. Redemption wasn't a grand blaze. It was this, the steady burn of standing firm when the road turned treacherous. Outside, a lone coyote howled in the distance, answered by the faint rev of an engine as a scout brother patrolled the perimeter. Jax clapped Miles on the shoulder, his grip firm. "We're in this, Saint, all the way." The words sealed it, a brotherhood reforged in the face of shadows creeping closer. Dawn would bring the ride, the search for truths buried under lies. But for now, under the clubhouse's watchful roof, safety held like a fragile dawn light piercing the dark. Miles leaned back, eyes on the embers, feeling the weight of family, not by blood, but by choice, settle around them like armor against the coming storm. The night stretched on, pregnant with the unspoken oaths that bound them, pulling them toward justice's hard edge. Dawn crept over the scrubland like a hesitant promise, painting the clubhouse roof in strokes of pale gold and lingering shadows. The air hung crisp, laced with the dew-kissed scent of sagebrush and the faint, acrid bite of last night's campfire embers. Miles stirred on the couch, Sophie's weight a light pressure against his side, her breathing soft and even in the first fragile hours of sleep. The clubhouse had quieted through the night, brothers taking shifts at the windows, their silhouettes etched against the fading stars like guardians of forgotten oaths. He shifted carefully, not wanting to wake her, and rubbed the stubble along his jaw, the rasp echoing in the stillness. Jax was already up, hunched over the kitchen counter with a pot of coffee brewing, its rich, dark aroma cutting through the morning chill. Steam rose in lazy curls, mirroring the tension that coiled in Miles's chest. "Scouts reported movement near the old trailer park at first light," Jack said without looking up, pouring 2 mugs with hands steady from years of holding lines in sand and storm. Ray's got a crew holed up there, low-lifes with records longer than our club charter, no sign of badges, but the air smells off. Miles accepted the mug, the heat seeping through the ceramic like a reminder of the fire they carried. He glanced at Sophie, her face smoothed by sleep, free of the fear that had etched lines too deep for a child. We ride quiet, no guns, no noise, just eyes and ears. She's counting on us to peel back the layers without breaking what's left. The words hung between them, a vow renewed in the half-light, echoing the desert promise that had haunted him. Protect the fragile, stand against the tide. Jax nodded, his scar pulling tight as he grinned faintly. Like old times, Saint. Truth over thunder. The crew assembled in the lot as the sun crested, engines coughing to life in a staggered chorus that vibrated through the ground like a heartbeat. Lena stayed behind with Sophie, her nurse's kit open on the table, a stack of crayons and paper laid out to bridge the waiting hours. "We'll hold the fort," she murmured to Miles, her eyes sharp with understanding. "Bring back the pieces she needs to heal." Sophie stirred then, rubbing her eyes, and clutched Miles's hand one last time. "You'll come back?" she whispered, voice thick with the remnants of dreams. He knelt, meeting her gaze with the steady calm of sunlit roads. "Every mile, kiddo. That's the promise." They rolled out in pairs, the convoy splitting like veins from a central artery, Miles and Jax leading toward the trailer's edge, others fanning to the fringes of town where whispers gathered like dust. The road unfurled under their tires, a ribbon of cracked asphalt flanked by whispering fields and skeletal trees, the morning mist clinging low like secrets reluctant to lift. Miles's Harley hummed beneath him, the vibrations sinking with the pulse in his temples, each mile marker a step deeper into the unknown. Wind tugged at his vest, carrying the faint metallic tang of distant rain, sharpening his senses to every shadow along the way. The trailer park emerged from the haze like a forgotten battlefield, rusted hulks clustered in uneven rows, laundry flapping listlessly on sagging lines. Laundry that spoke of lives paused mid-breath, faded shirts, a child's sock tangled in the breeze. They parked at the perimeter, engines silenced to a whisper, and proceeded on foot, boots sinking into soft earth that muffled their approach. Jax pointed to a central unit, its door ajar, voices drifting out like smoke, rough laughter undercut by the clink of bottles, words slurring into threats about the girl and tying up loose ends. Miles crouched behind a weathered fence, the splintered wood digging into his palm, peering through gaps where sunlight slanted like accusatory fingers. Inside, Uncle Ray paced the dim interior, a hulking figure with a face twisted by perpetual scowl, his shirt stained and sleeves rolled to reveal tattoos faded from too much sun and spite. Flanking him were the men from the road, hooded shadows now stripped of pretense, nursing hangovers with cans gripped too tight. "She slips again, and it's on all of us," Ray growled, slamming a fist on a rickety table that rattled the whole structure. "That biker thinks he's a hero, we'll bury him with the rest." The words landed like blows, stirring the bile in Miles's throat. Not violence for its own sake, but the casual cruelty that preyed on the small and silent. Jax's hand on his shoulder steadied him, a silent reminder. Justice wasn't a rush of blood, but a measured unraveling. They listened longer, piecing fragments. A mother's disappearance tied to unpaid debts, favors called in from crooked corners, a system that labeled it all private matter to avoid the stain. No body mentioned, just echoes of a struggle that left marks on walls and souls, the kind that social workers filed away under unsubstantiated. Slipping away undetected, they regrouped at a roadside diner on the town's frayed edge, its neon sign flickering open like a weary eye. The place smelled of grease and overbrewed tea, booths scarred from countless confessions. The crew filtered in, hats low, ordering plates of eggs and toast that steamed under the harsh fluorescence. Reports overlapped in hushed tones, a neighbour's furtive nod about late-night cries, a mechanic's grumble over raised threats to silence tongues, threads leading to a local authority figure with a ledger of favours. "It's a web," one brother muttered, fork pausing mid-air. "Pull one and the whole thing quivers." Miles stared into his coffee, the black surface rippling like troubled waters, reflecting the moral crossroads ahead. Confront Ray head-on, risk the girl in the crossfire, or weave through the bureaucracy's blind spots with evidence that couldn't be ignored. The dilemma gnawed, an echo of choices made in war zones where right and wrong blurred under fire. But here, in this sun-dappled booth, clarity sharpened. Sophie's trust was the compass, her safety the unyielding north. "We document it all," he decided, voice low but firm. "Photos, names, every loose thread. Then we take it to someone clean, outside the rot." As they mounted up again, the diner fading in the mirrors, the road ahead stretched toward confrontation's horizon. The sun climbed higher, burning off the mist, illuminating the path where loyalty would clash with corruption. Miles felt the pull, the ancient promise evolving, not just protection, but the quiet revolution of truth against the tide. Back at the clubhouse, Sophie waited, her world hanging on their return. And in that fragile balance, Miles rode on, the weight of chosen family propelling him forward into the gathering storm. If this story's gripping you, hit that like button below. The midday sun beat down on the convoy like a relentless interrogator, turning the asphalt into a shimmering mirage that distorted the horizon. Miles led the pack back toward the clubhouse, the Harley's throttle a steady growl under his grip, each twist of the road pulling at the threads of what they'd uncovered. Dust devils swirled in the rearview, chasing them like unanswered questions, while the wind carried the faint, salty bite of sweat and resolve from the brothers riding flank. Jax stayed close, his bike sinking effortlessly, a silent partner in the unfolding reckoning. The trailer's ghosts lingered in Miles's mind, Ray's snarling face, the half-heard echoes of a life fractured by neglect and worse, fueling the quiet fury that simmered beneath his calm. As the clubhouse came into view, its metal roof winking in the light like a beacon forged from scrap and solidarity, Miles felt the shift, from hunters in the shadows to bearers of fragile truths. The lot filled with the staggered halt of engines, gravel crunching under tires as the crew dismounted, vests heavy with the morning's weight. Lena met them at the door, her arms crossed, eyes scanning faces for signs of blood or breakthrough. "She's been drawing," she said simply, nodding inside. "Keeps asking when the bad dreams end." No more words needed. The club knew the currency of hope was action, not platitudes. Sophie looked up from the table as Miles entered, her crayons scattered like fallen leaves across a sketch pad, images of swirling roads and shadowed figures taking shape in bold strokes. The room smelled of fresh-baked bread from Lena's oven, a warm counterpoint to the tension threading the air. She set the pencil down, hope flickering in her eyes like sunlight through cracks. "Did you find them? The ones who took her away?" Her voice was a threadbare whisper, laced with the ache of mornings without answers, but Miles saw the steel beneath, resilience born from too many hidden nights. He pulled up a chair, the wood scraping softly, and sat close, the crew gathering in a loose circle that enclosed without crowding. Jax spread the notes on the table, scribbled addresses, names whispered in fear, photos snapped from fence slats showing Ray's domain in stark relief, cluttered yards, flickering TV glow through cracked windows. "We got pieces, Sophie," Miles said, his tone measured as a slow engine idle. "Your uncle's tangled in something rotten, debts that twist into threats, folks paid to look away. Your mom. She fought to keep you safe, and it cost her." He chose words like steps on thin ice, skirting the voids without plunging in, honoring the child's fragile map of loss. Sophie's fingers traced a drawn motorcycle, its lines fierce and protective. She promised we'd leave, said there was a place where uncles couldn't yell anymore. Tears welled but didn't fall, her chin lifting in quiet defiance. The room held its breath. The brothers shifting, tattooed hands clenching mugs, eyes reflecting their own buried scars. One, a veteran named Rook, with a limp from an old blast, murmured, "Promises like that don't die easy. We make 'em stick." It was the creed of the Iron Promise, etched deeper than ink, loyalty as the chain that bound the broken. Miles nodded, the weight of his own vow pressing like an unseen passenger. Years back, under that desert sky, his comrade's last breath had forged it. "Keep mine whole, Saint," a oath he'd carried alone until the road delivered Sophie to his side. Now it branched, pulling in the club like roots seeking water. "We're building the case," he continued, voice gaining the gravel edge of conviction. "Every name, every favor owed. But Ray won't wait. He'll sniff us out." Jax leaned in, adding, "Got a contact, old army buddy in county services, clean as they come." We hand him the file, let the light do the work. The plan unfolded in murmurs, maps refolded with routes to safe drop points, rotations for watches that blurred day into night. Lena busied herself with sandwiches, the clink of plates a rhythmic underscore to the strategy, her presence a steadying force amid the storm's approach. Sophie watched it all, her small frame absorbing the rhythm of chosen family, the way arguments dissolved into nods, doubts into action. For the first time, Miles saw her shoulders ease, the jacket he'd given her now a cape of sorts, draped over her like armor woven from leather and trust. But as afternoon slanted into gold, a shadow intruded, the distant whine of an engine, too purposeful for a passerby, cutting through the scrub like a knife. Miles was at the window first, peering through dust-moted glass, his pulse sinking with the club's unspoken alert. A dusty SUV crested the rise, slowing at the gate, its driver obscured by glare but posture screaming intent. The crew moved like oil, silent, fluid, Jack signaling positions while Rook fetched the logs from the safe. "Raise play," Miles guessed, hand resting on Sophie's shoulder. "Testing the line." The vehicle halted, door creaking open to reveal not Ray, but a wiry man in a rumpled suit, badge glinting like fool's gold under the sun. He approached cautiously, hands visible, a folder tucked under his arm. "Mr. Kincaid. Name's Harlan Tate, Social Services. Got a call about a missing minor. Mind if we talk?" His voice carried the oily smoothness of authority stretched thin, eyes darting to the Harleys like they were threats in chrome. Miles stepped out, the door thudding shut behind him, the air thick with the scent of sun-baked earth and suspicion. Inside, Sophie froze, crayons forgotten, her whisper urgent. "That's one of them, the ones who came before." Lena pulled her close, the embrace a barrier of quiet strength, while the brothers held position, ears tuned to the exchange outside. Harlan's words filtered through the walls, questions laced with implication, hints of custody orders and family rights, the corruption's tendril reaching to reclaim what it claimed. Miles stood firm, his responses clipped, buying time as Jax slipped out the back to circle wide, phone in hand for the clean contact. The standoff stretched, sun dipping lower, casting long shadows that clawed at the lot. Harlan's facade cracked under Miles's steady gaze, the folder trembling slightly. "Look, this ain't personal, just doing my job." But the lie hung exposed, a thread in the web they were unraveling. As Jax returned with a nod, back up en route, evidence secured, the agent retreated to his vehicle, engine coughing to life in defeat. The dust settled slowly, but the air hummed with the promise of escalation. Ray's net closing, the club's resolve hardening like steel in the forge. Miles re-entered, the door's creak a punctuation to the tension's release. Sophie met his eyes, a spark of belief igniting. "You stopped him." It wasn't a question, but a bridge to the future they were building, 1 mile, one truth at a time. The clubhouse pulsed anew, plans sharpening into motion, the ancient oaths of protection evolving into a symphony of justice. Night would fall soon, but in its embrace, the iron promise rode on. Guardians against the encroaching dark, their loyalty the light that no shadow could extinguish. The twilight bled across the scrubland like spilled ink, deepening the shadows that pooled around the clubhouse like wary sentinels. Miles lingered at the window, long after Harlan's SUV had vanished down the rutted drive, its taillights swallowed by the encroaching dusk. The air inside hung heavy with the scent of cooling bread and sharpened resolve, the faint crackle of the fireplace underscoring the murmurs of the crew as they pored over the table's scattered evidence. Jax paced the edge of the room, his boots thudding softly against the planks, while Lena kept Sophie occupied with a deck of cards, their soft laughter a fragile counterpoint to the storm brewing beyond the walls. Miles turned from the glass, his reflection fracturing in the pane, a man etched by roads and regrets, eyes holding the weight of vows that refused to fade. "That wasn't a courtesy call," he said, voice low as gravel, shifting under tires. "Tate's the thread leading straight to Ray. He's bought, or scared, either way. He's the key to cracking this open." The words settled like dust after a hard ride, stirring nods from the brothers. Rook, nursing a bandaged hand from an old habit of clenching too tight, leaned forward. "We tail him? See where the rat runs?" But Sophie looked up then, cards forgotten in her lap, her small face paling under the bulb's warm glow. "What if they come here? For me?" The question pierced the room, raw as a fresh scar, reminding them all of the stakes, not just ink on paper, but a child's fragile world teetering on the edge. Miles crossed to her, kneeling with the ease of someone who'd mended more than machines, his hand enveloping hers. "They won't touch you, kiddo, not while we've got breath and brothers." It was more than reassurance. It was the echo of his desert oath, now woven into this makeshift family, threads of loyalty pulling tighter against the pull of corruption. As night fully claimed the sky, stars pricking through like distant promises, the club shifted into motion. Jax coordinated the watch, pairs rotating under the moon's pale scrutiny, engines idling low to avoid drawing eyes. Miles stayed inside, sketching a timeline on a napkin, the supermarket plea, the road chase, the trailer's snarls, Harlan's oily intrusion. Each mark was a milepost toward truth, but the gaps yawned wide, proof of a mother's vanishing, the invisible chains binding the town's underbelly. Sleep evaded him, the couch creaking under his restless shifts. Sophie's even breaths a nearby rhythm that both soothed and steeled him. Dawn broke with a vengeance, the sun slashing through the eastern windows like a blade unsheathed, illuminating motes of dust that danced in the beams. The clubhouse stirred early, coffee brewing in urgent pots, the aroma mingling with the metallic tang of dew on chrome outside. Lena checked Sophie's forehead, her touch gentle as a breeze off open plains. "Fever's down, she's tough like her guardian." Sophie smiled faintly, but her eyes held the shadows of unrest, dreams haunted by echoes of shouts and slamming doors. Miles watched from the doorway, the pull of the road calling him out, but duty rooting him here, a guardian forged in loss, now standing sentinel for another's light. Jax burst in mid-morning, wind-blown and urgent, his vest dusted with the grit of back roads. Tate's on the move, spotted him heading to the county offices, our clean contacts in position. The words ignited the room, brothers grabbing keys and jackets in a fluid surge, the air humming with the prelude to confrontation. Miles lifted Sophie into a quick hug, her arms looping around his neck like vines seeking strength. "Stay sharp with Lena, we'll bring the dawn home." She nodded, whispering, "Be my dad out there too," the plea twisting something deep in his chest, turning personal redemption into a shared crusade. The convoy assembled swiftly, a dozen Harleys forming a phalanx of rumbling intent, tires biting into gravel as they peeled toward town. The road wound through sun-dappled valleys, wildflowers nodding along the shoulders like silent witnesses, the wind whipping scents of wild thyme and warmed earth. Miles rode point, Jax at his wing, the vibration of the engine syncing with the pulse of anticipation. They skirted the trailer park's fringes, avoiding Ray's watchful eyes, and cut toward the squat brick building that housed the county's veiled dealings, its flag limp in the still air, windows reflecting the sky like blind mirrors. Parking in the lot's shadowed edge, they dismounted with practiced silence, vests blending into the mundane flow of clerks and petitioners. Inside, the air was stale, laced with printer ink and faded bureaucracy. Fluorescent hum overhead a drone that masked their approach. Jax's contact, a wiry ex-soldier named Ellis, his desk piled with files like battle plans, met them in a side corridor, his nod crisp as a salute. Tate's in conference now, sloppy, left his door cracked. Snag this. He slid a folder across, edges worn, contents spilling secrets, falsified reports labeling Sophie's home stable, payments routed through shell accounts to Ray's name, hints of a struggle swept under rugs of insufficient evidence. Miles scanned the pages, the words blurring into a mosaic of moral rot, debts enforced with fists, a mother's defiance ending in silence, the system's blind eye greased by fear. "This ties it," he murmured, fury coiling like a spring in his gut. But Ellis held up a hand. "Not enough for arrest yet. Need the girl to corroborate safe. Ray's got pull pushed too hard and it bounces back." The dilemma hung, ethical thorns pricking at the club's code. Justice swift or justice sure? Miles' mind flashed to Sophie, her trust a fragile flame. Rushing could snuff it, but delay invited the wolves closer. Outside, as they regrouped under the building's overhang, a shadow stirred. The hooded man from the store, lurking across the street, phoned to his ear like a fuse lit. He spotted them, bolting toward a waiting truck, the engine roaring to life in frantic escape. "He's calling it in," Jax growled, mounting up. The chase ignited, Harleys thundering after the fleeing vehicle, weaving through traffic that parted like waves before a storm. The truck swerved onto a side road, kicking up clouds of dust that choked the air, tires screaming on curves that hugged sheer drops. Miles pushed harder, the wind tearing at his face, heart pounding with the rhythm of pursuit. Not for vengeance, but for the closure that would shield Sophie from the encroaching night. The standoff came at a dead-end overlook. The truck slewed across the path, its driver scrambling out with hands raised, eyes wild. Ray emerged from the passenger side, broader in daylight, his scowl twisting into a snarl. "You bikers think you own the road. That girl's mine. Blood says so." The words spat like venom, but Miles dismounted steady, the crew forming a line of unyielding presence, engines ticking cool behind them. No drawn weapons, just the weight of truths held in folders and oaths. "Blood don't mean claim when it's poisoned," Miles replied, voice carrying over the cliff's edge wind, the valley sprawling below like a map of forgotten justice. Ray lunged, but Jack stepped forward, blocking with a forearm like iron. The air crackled, tension thick as pre-storm ozone, the standoff teetering on the brink. Ellis's voice cut through from a trailing cruiser, backup arriving, lights flashing blue in the rear-view promise. Ray faltered, the web unraveling in real time, his muscles scattering like leaves in gusts. As cuffs clicked and statements flowed, Miles felt the shift, not triumph's blaze, but the quiet dawn of accountability, the promise upheld in the face of corruption's crumble. Back at the clubhouse by eventide, the folder's weight lifted slightly, Sophie rushing to Miles with arms wide. "Did it work?" she asked, eyes searching his. He nodded, pulling her close, the scent of crayons and safety enveloping them. "One step closer, kiddo. The road's clearing." But in the gathering dark, whispers from Ellis hinted at deeper roots, Ray's ties to higher shadows. A final push needed to bury the threat for good. The club circled tighter, loyalty's fire banked but burning, ready for the last ride where redemption would seal the vow. The night wrapped the clubhouse in a velvet shroud, stars scattered like embers from a dying fire across the vast scrubland sky. Inside, the air hummed with subdued energy, the scent of pine-scented cleaner mingling with the earthy residue of the day's dust still clinging to vests and boots. Miles sat at the scarred oak table, the folder from Ellis spread open before him like a battlefield map, its pages whispering secrets under the low glow of a single lamp. Sophie had curled up on the couch nearby, her breathing a soft cadence that anchored the room, Lena watching over her with the quiet vigilance of a sister born from shared scars. The crew lingered in the shadows, Jax nursing a mug of black coffee, Rook leaning against the wall with arms crossed, their presence a silent testament to the bonds that had carried them this far. Miles traced a finger along the final lines of the report. Ray's connections snaking up to a county commissioner, favors traded like currency in the dark, a network built on silence and silenced voices. The standoff at the Overlook had cracked the surface, but these roots ran deep, fed by the kind of corruption that festered in overlooked corners. "One more push," Miles murmured, his voice a rumble like distant thunder rolling over plains. "We expose the head and the rest withers." Jax nodded, his scar catching the light as he set down his mug. "Ellis is prepping the drop, anonymous, ironclad, but Ray's cornered. He'll lash out before dawn." The words hung heavy, stirring the ghosts Miles had long ridden beside. That desert vow, gasped under a relentless sun, had been simple then: protect the line, hold the ground. But life twisted promises like winding roads, turning solitary oaths into a chorus of loyalty. Sophie stirred in her sleep, murmuring something lost to dreams, and Miles felt the pull sharpen. This wasn't just for a fallen brother anymore. It was for the girl who'd claimed him in a supermarket aisle, her plea rewriting his path from wanderer to guardian. As midnight deepened, the clubhouse phone shattered the quiet, a shrill ring that cut through the haze like a flare. Jack snatched it up, his face hardening as he listened. "Tate's flipped. Says Ray's mobilizing, heading for the safe house on the ridge, the one Lena's kin used to run." The room ignited, chairs scraping back as the crew surged to life, jackets zipped with the precision of old drills. Miles rose, glancing at Sophie, who blinked awake, eyes wide with the echo of fear. "Stay here, lock it down," he told Lena, but the nurse shook her head, bundling the girl into a blanket. "We're family too. No one's left behind." They rolled out under the moon's silver gaze, a convoy of shadows slicing through the night, engines a muffled roar that blended with the wind's low moan. The road to the ridge twisted like a serpent, flanked by jagged outcrops that loomed like silent judges, the air cooling to carry the crisp bite of pine and impending rain. Miles led, Sophie's small form secured in the club's armored van, trailing the bikes, her face pressed to the window, watching the taillights flicker like guiding stars. The weight of the folder burned in his saddlebag, evidence that would topple the web if they could deliver it clean. The safe house emerged from the tree line, a modest cabin hunkered against the slope, its windows dark, but for a faint glow from within. They cut engines at the base, proceeding on foot through underbrush that whispered against their legs, the scent of damp moss grounding their steps. Jax signaled halt at the tree line, pointing to movement. Ray's truck idling out front, figures unloading crates with hurried grunts, Tate's silhouette unmistakable in the cab, his betrayal etched in the slump of his shoulders. "He's trading the last of it. Pay off for silence," Jax breathed. Miles's pulse steadied, the biker's calm settling like fog over a battlefield. No charge, no chaos. This was the measured strike of justice. poetic in its unravelling. They circled wide, Rook and two others flanking to cut escape routes, while Miles and Jax approached the rear under cover of night. The cabin door creaked open, spilling yellow light and voices thick with desperation. Ray barking orders, Tate's pleas cutting through like frayed wire. "This ends it clean. The girl's gone. No traces." Miles's blood chilled at the words. Not for the threat, but the casual erasure of lives like Sophie's mother, reduced to loose ends in a ledger of greed. He nodded to Jax, who slipped forward, planting a tracker on the undercarriage with the stealth of shadows. Inside, the confrontation brewed without a shot. Ellis's cruiser crested the ridge unannounced, lights off but presence thunderous, pulling up with a gravel crunch that froze the scene. Tate bolted from the cab, hands up, his folder of confessions tumbling to the dirt like fallen leaves. "I couldn't. It's bigger than us," he stammered as Ellis cuffed him, the clean agent's face a mask of stern resolve. Ray whirled, eyes blazing in the headlights' glare, but the crew emerged from the dark, a ring of vests and unyielding stares. Miles at the fore. "Game's over, Ray. Your blood's no claim when it's built on lies." Ray lunged for a crate, but Jax intercepted, pinning him with a grip forged in foxholes. No blows landed, the fight drained from him like air from a punctured tire, the weight of exposure crumpling his frame. Ellis read the charges, falsified records, coercion, traces of aggression swept under official rugs, the words weaving the noose of accountability. Sophie watched from the van's shadowed interior, Lena's arm around her, the girl's face a mosaic of relief and lingering ache. As Ray was led away, his curses fading into the night, Miles approached the vehicle, kneeling to meet her eyes. "It's done, kiddo. The shadows break at dawn." Back at the clubhouse as the first light kissed the horizon, the air lightened, carrying the fresh promise of rain-washed earth. The crew gathered one last time, the folder sealed and dispatched to higher hands, state oversight, untainted by local rot. Sophie clung to Miles, her small hand in his, the jacket now a permanent fixture like a badge of belonging. "You were my dad when I needed one," she whispered, and he pulled her close, the hole from his own loss filling with this chosen light. Jax clapped his shoulder, the brotherhood's nod sealing the vow's fulfillment. Promises endured, not in grand gestures, but in the quiet miles of standing firm. Redemption settled like morning dew, cool and renewing, as the iron promise looked to the road ahead, not solitary, but shared. Sophie would find a home, not in blood, but in the family forged from honor's fire. Miles mounted his Harley one final time that dawn, the engine's purr a hymn to justice won, carrying them forward where loyalty's legacy rode eternal. Thank you for riding this journey with us. If these tales of honor and chosen family resonate, please subscribe for more stories that light the road ahead.